What's up, guys? So I've had another question, which was, what do stockbrokers actually do? And other than another part of the video which I caught on how they get brokers commission of 0.92%, how else do they actually make money? I'm going to answer those questions about stockbrokers in Zimbabwe, just to give you a perspective of what they do and what other services they offer to you as an investor when you sign up with a stockbroker in Zimbabwe. Well, so to start with, a stockbroker, as I have said in a couple of other videos that I've done, is that their role really is to bring together players in the buying and selling of securities. Well, by this I mean fixed income or equities, which we commonly refer to as shares of companies. What happens is that when you want to buy your shares, you have to call someone to say, look, I'm looking for shares. Well, if all investors were theoretically on a Facebook group, then you just post. But this is not what happens, because most of the other investors are usually based on their lives trying to make more money, and they really don't have any time to follow up on anything. But when they want to sell shares, they also tell someone who is their broker. So the broker goes into the office every morning, and what they do is that they're trying to connect buyers and sellers in this market. They're trying to make sure that markets run properly. Those who want to sell can sell, and those who want to buy can buy. You call your broker, you say, I want to buy 100 shares of Zimbabwean. And what they do is that they go into a system where they put in your order, and they try to figure out whether there are any sellers for that. They also try, of course, to hit up other brokers who they might have, or in the event that they actually do have the shares themselves. Sometimes some brokers might keep some shares that they can use. In the event that they have some of these shares in stock, they might actually be able to sell them to you so that this transaction goes on. So in general terms, this is what brokers do. They connect buyers and sellers. But of course, in Zimbabwe, because our market is not as very robust, you cannot make a lot of money just doing purely this, which is just connecting buyers and sellers and getting commissions. So sometimes brokers do offer other services that then in other markets would have been taken by other players. And I'm going to give you this as part of my understanding and as part of my experience of the brokers that I have dealt with. So how else do brokers make money other than commission, which we have already talked about, which is 0.092%? Well, the other thing is that they actually do sell research. So people who want to invest in markets sometimes might not have the detailed knowledge. If you and I do not know, for example, that I do not know what. If we do not know that Miko's Holdings is about to partner with Pick n Pay, which is something that has already happened, this is not any inside information. But as you know, in Zimbabwe, TM, which is I think the Miko's group, did a partnership with Pick n Pay, which is a South African retail, and TM now in Zimbabwe works as TM Pick n Pay. And so when this happens, some people might want to figure out what's actually happening with the future of the company. As soon as this deal is announced, investors might want to know what are the possibilities of, this new entity, displacing other players, which in Zimbabwe would be OK and Spar or Bonmashare or anyone. What are the chances of them gaining market share? And so these brokers do research on these companies. They follow companies. They do site visits. They figure out, they talk to management. They figure out what management of TM Pick n Pay, the combined entity, has as their vision, how they intend to penetrate the market, and they make their own conclusions and say, well, look, I think from what we have talked about with the CFO, we think they really have a solid plan. We don't think we have had that being said about anyone who is a CEO of a CFO of a retail company. And so we think that they are going to penetrate the market very well and they're going to grow. And we really think they're going to grow at this rate. When they do that, they release the research. Some of this research is free, but some of it is sold. When they sell this research, which is not usually just sold as a PDF, but it's usually a subscription where investors subscribe and they say, look, for the subscription that we're going to say, we're going to send you weekly research, monthly research, and we're going to send you any ad hoc research that comes. If there's a deal that's coming up, we give you a deep insight into this deal with like 70 pages of it written on this deal. So when this happens, they sell this research and investors subscribe, then brokers can make a little bit more money. What else do they do? I think the third thing that I've had in my experience, I'm not going to talk about things that I haven't experienced, but that I know. The third experience that I've had is that they also act as sponsoring brokers in M&A deals. So what this happens is, if two companies are coming together, or if two companies are breaking apart, for example, you can talk of an example of Econet breaking apart with Cassava, or as you say, Cassava being separately listed, Cassava being the business that was formerly in Econet but is now operating on its own with EcoCash and Stewart Bank and some other entities. And so when you look at this, these shares that have to be sold out when this company is listed as a separate entity, maybe it's intending to raise $1 billion in terms of its listing. When they do this, there have to be people who push out the shares. Sometimes it can be the banks that are sponsoring this deal, but sometimes the banks do pass off these shares to brokers who act as sponsoring brokers, and they quickly reach out their clients and make a pitch and say, look, this is a deal we have. We think Cassava is going to be a great company. We really think you should buy it. And then they convince their investors, because they are always talking to investors and brokers. When they do that, they get a cut. Essentially what happens is, if these shares are going to be sold at $1 per share, the brokers might be able to get these shares at 95 cents, and for every share that they sell, they might be able to capture this 5 cents. Not a lot, but when you add all these things, the money quickly adds up, and you can see that stockbrokers can be able to continue as going concerns as a business. The other thing that I'm going to talk about is, what information do I actually get from my broker? I'm going to talk about my experiences, as I've said. I don't want to mislead people and talk about things that don't happen in my life. So what information do I get from my broker? The first piece of information that I get is the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange price list. Of course, before you buy or sell anything, you have your conclusions, right? You might work out your own calculations, and you think, I think the fair value of Econet shares is $1 each. And then you ask your broker for the price list and say, let's see. When the broker gives you the price list and you see that the last shares of Econet traded were at 80 cents and you think they are worth $1, then you're much more likely to say, look, buy them at the market price. Just get all the shares at 80 cents because I have a strong feeling about this. On the other hand, if you work out your calculations and you think Econet should be $1.20, then you get the price list and you see it as $3, then you're much more likely to say, you know what? Hold on. So the price list is something that really guides you. And of course, the price list shows many other things. It shows where the shares have been to year to date, year to start beginning from the 1 January, these shares have gone up 20% or they have fallen 45%. It also shows you the volumes of the shares that have been traded as of that day. So it shows other pieces of information that you might be interested. If you're someone who is into data and you want to figure out the trends that are happening for some companies that you might be interested in. So the second thing that I get from my brokers is a morning summary, which is essentially an email that tells me the most important business news that will affect companies that are listed on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange that day. So what they do is that they figure out all the information, they sift through all the major newspapers, and they figure out a story that might affect OK and also affect Cassava or someone else, some other listed entity. What this does is that if you are an investor and you subscribe to these morning summaries, depending on whether your broker offers them or not, it's a very quick way of going through the most important news, what really matters. Instead of you opening the Herald every day, opening the Zimbabwe Independent, opening all these other pieces of press and buying 10 newspapers, when you could just have someone package the news that are important to you. So it saves you time. You quickly read up what's important and you figure out whether there are any stories that you think are interesting for you to do further research into these companies. The third thing that I get is a monthly or quarterly snapshot. And when I get this from my brokers, this is essentially a more deeper dive. It's not looking at day-to-day news, but it's looking at policies that are likely to affect the country for a longer period of time. When the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe comes up with a new monetary policy, or when the Ministry of Finance releases a statutory instrument that might affect how one company will behave or something like that, when the finance minister comes out with a budget, the stockbrokers do an analysis with these numbers. They figure out what's going to happen. When there's a government policy that releases to say, well, we're giving $2 billion to command agriculture, they do a deep dive into this. They figure out what it means for seed companies like Seedco. They figure out what it means for the GMB. They figure out whether this will bring inflation, whether this money that's being injected by the government for command agriculture purposes is too much or is too little? Will it hit up the economy or will it not? And just to reiterate, in this video, I talked about the experiences and the services that I do get from my brokers that work with me for the purposes of investing on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. If you do have other services that you get from your broker that you think are worth it, that you think other people might be interested in and other people might appreciate, do let me know in the comments below, and we'll be sure to have an interesting discussion of what different brokers are offering to investors on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. But until next time, my name is Maro.